seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
There we go. Good morning, America. This is, with no apologies, Dr. Deb Carlin and Richard Flint with the Learning Center and Richard Flint Seminars. Yay. Good morning, Mr. Flint. How are you today?
I am alive and well, healthy and happy and fit. How about you?
I'm alive and well, giggly, thrilled, happy to be here, and delighted that we co-host this show. Golly golly.
Why are you happy?
I'm happy because it allows me a visit with you every single week where it feels like we're actually sitting together because we're in this Zoom room. And it makes me really happy because we are so immersed in smart conversation, lightening it up every now and again because it gets intense. And we're talking about things that really matter and impact people's lives. Here in the show, the influencers, no apologies, from Richard Flint and Dr. Deb Carlin, here on Blog Talk Radio at the K Factor, where K equals kindness, and the factors are all the things that lead to it. And the kindest thing that we can do for you is bring you love and kindness and generosity, hope and faith and inspiration, and how about courage and strategies? Because in today's culture, today's era here in America and around the world, in a world of uncertainty, isn't that what we need, Richard?
Yeah. Do you think that most people, and I know this is a broad statement, but do you think that most people today are really happy?
I think happiness comes in pockets. And I think actually as a culture for a long time, we've been chasing happiness in superficial ways and not being really spiritual and godly and centered and grounded, and finding our happiness comes from within as a result of gratitude, because you have to be in a place of stillness in order to discover that. What we have been is chasing. That'll make me happy. That'll make me happy. And by the way, I've been guilty of it. So, I'm not castigating anybody.
Well, it seems like a lot of us live with the spaghetti theory. I'm going to take this and throw it against the wall, and maybe, just maybe, it'll make me happy. But it's interesting because most people are seeking happiness through the external factors rather than finding happiness through the internal factors.
That's exactly, you put it succinctly what it took me 37 words to say.
I know that's one of the differences between you talk and I
abbreviate.
What do you think is affecting happiness today?
Well, I think that uncertainty is at the lead, and mixed with uncertainty is fear. America was freaking terrorized all last spring and summer, and it was despicable and reprehensible because nobody stopped it. And I'll tell you what, I don't care what the story is. That's not forgivable. That is not forgivable. We have cities who have been desecrated. We have monuments and buildings that were more than 100 years old that have been absolutely destroyed, and you can't recreate that. You can pretend, but you can't recreate that. And I think, the level of disrespect that was launched on a beautiful culture is just disgusting. And even if it's not a beautiful culture, it's just wrong. You don't go out and you don't destroy what's not yours.
Do you think that, sticking with happiness for a moment, because we talk about uncertainty, and the lack of uncertainty to me affects stability.
It does.
That I need certainty to be stable. And
Very much.
understanding that not every part of my life is always going to be stable.
Yeah.
But I do need a point that I can come back to, one place in my life where I can stand
Yep.
and feel stable. Because when I feel stable, I feel happy.
Yeah.
When I feel stable, I feel safe
Yep.
and I feel secure.
Right.
And I think that one of the big words today that no one wants to talk about is the instability that there is in the human life today.
You are 100% correct about that. One of the analogies that I draw is having been in earthquakes. I don't like the feeling because it is the ultimate experience of instability. The ground is literally shaking under your feet. The walls are crumbling and you don't know what it is that you can hold on to and what you can count on. And by the way, as they say in geophysics, the aftershocks are actually almost even worse than the actual earthquake itself, because when the earthquake is over, you're thinking, oh, that was so horrible. I hope it's over. I hope that never happens again. Then comes the shifting of the plates in the middle of the earth, and you're feeling it again, and you don't know, is this going to be another huge eruption? Is this just a momentary thing? Is this going to get more severe? And what happens with that, it travels along the same path that you just called out and labeled. And when you feel that uncertainty and that lack of stability, you don't know if you can sit or lay or stand or lean where and when and for how long. And then you're shaking on the inside, you don't feel safe, you can't get into your creative mode, into your functional mode very easily. It's not really accessible to you at that point in time.
Do you think sometimes that uncertainty, when it pairs itself with instability, creates fear for people?
Oh, absolutely. 100% yes.
And when uncertainty pairs itself with instability, and that creates fear, then what does that do to the human psyche?
It tilts it, and depending on where you were prior to that experience, really grounded, really solid, or a little unhinged, or very unhinged, what it does is it takes you on a journey that can do a number of things along a continuum. And I think it goes from something that is soft and softly disturbing, that puts you in a dimension of living in the contrast. And in living in the contrast, you can see where you want to be. And so you use it as a point of leverage to regain your stability, or it can string you out all the way to the end. And people will feel it so severely that those are some of the statistics that needed the anti-anxiety meds, needed the alcohol. I'm saying either or, maybe in combination, went into panic, went into despair, went into hopeless. And ultimately, some of those people have taken their lives.
I remember this was probably about 5 years ago, maybe longer. I was in New Zealand when the earthquake hit Christchurch.
Oh my.
And I was over there in Auckland to speak, and the gentleman that brought me over said, "I'm going to make a drive to Christchurch. Do you want to go with me?" So I went with him. And when we got to Christchurch, he had actually grown up there.
Hmm.
And we drove into where they would let us go. And just this whole sadness came over him as he looked around, and he said, "This doesn't look like anything that I remember."
Oh my gosh.
And, I've paralleled that to where we are today, and that our country today does not look like anything that it has looked like. And, you know, we, we've talked about this before, but what makes us feel safe a lot of times and what makes us feel secure is when we can establish routines that we can follow.
I love routines.
Yeah. Um, but when the uncertainty comes in as an earthquake and it starts to rattle everything about us, because, so many times when our routines are sort of torn apart, we rattle from the inside because you take my routine away from me. And there's a part of me that doesn't feel safe because the uncertainty leads to a point where things in my life become unpredictable. And when things in my life feel unpredictable, all of a sudden I feel out of control.
Mhm.
And anytime you and I are out of control, then what happens? It creates that instability.
Yeah.
And when you put all that together, then that instability manifests itself in fear that says, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And what happens then, as far as I can see, Deb, is that then that instability makes it tough for me to make a decision. And what
Yeah.
I do is I tend to take a wait and see attitude, which in a lot of ways paralyzes me.
It
I
does.
mean, you and I are going through this. We've been through it and we're going through it.
Yeah.
Is that this uncertainty in our world and the effect that it's had on the sphere of influence that we have, which has created the uncertainty with a lot of people and left people feeling unstable, has affected how you and I have to do what we do today.
Yeah.
And I always come back to this because it's so critical for me, and that then creates the need to adapt. But if I'm unstable, I'm not sure what I need to adapt to. That instability creates the ability for the need for me to make adjustments, but I'm fearful to make the adjustments because I'm not sure what's going to happen. So it's like I want to, but I feel paralyzed. And I think sometimes people don't fully understand the dynamics of what uncertainty does inwardly
Mhm.
to a human life.
Mhm. You know, you are so absolutely, genuinely spot on, dead serious, drop dead real. The thing that I have found myself transitioning through over this past year has been all of that and coming into a place of ultimate despair at various points in time and looking out onto this huge lake and thinking to myself, if I were not such a dedicated believer in God and a practicing Catholic, I would take a walk out there and just pretend that I was going to try to swim across the lake with the hopes that God would call me home and take me to heaven. Now, that kind of thinking um, is very disturbing to experience. But what it did for me is it brought me to my knees. It brought me into a position of really the Saint Ignatian process of discernment, of looking at what it what it is that I was doing and what is it that I really wanted and what was I going to do to try to get where I want to be. And so in going through that, I started really living in the contrast of what has happened to our country and our world and how it's impacting me and how my life has been and how I want my life to be. And when I did that, It was a painful and a refreshing process. Doing these shows every day has been enormously healing for me, because it is no longer not having a routine, no longer not being on schedule, no longer being in isolation. Um, but knowing that this part of my life is my certainty in part, and then it's generalized to additional habits where I've got additional certainties. But what it's made me really realize, and this is the part that really hit me when you were saying that, I came to realize the ways in which I am no longer, and this is a perfect upshot out of this last year for our entire audience. When you feel at risk for a virus, either the germ, and whatever level you look at it at, mild or pandemic, or you look at the social psychology of it, social distancing, social isolation, masking, you feel vulnerable. You feel very vulnerable. You feel vulnerable, and you feel that vulnerability and that fear every time you go outside and you look at everybody else. And it has caused me to have a different tolerance. And my tolerance bar has shifted down. I am not willing to tolerate people who damage my psyche any longer in any way, to have anything in the way of contact with me. You cannot reach me. If you've been a person who has damaged me, then I'd like for you to stay over on the outside of my Zoom box. I'm not inviting you into this space, because I think in the profession that you and I are both in of caring for people, we've taken on all kinds of people and let them in and let them in and led with trust. And, we can help anybody anytime. Well, that's shifted this past year. I love people, and I love being a nurturing human being, but wow, I factor into this formula now like I never have before. I care about what happens to me. My psyche is precious, and I got enough going on, as does everybody else. Not saying I'm anything more important or more special or different than anybody else. But if we start really taking care of the self, we're going to have a whole lot more capacity to find our stability again.
See, I I don't mind inviting people into my Zoom room as long as they don't bring their boom box.
And
And
blast you out.
yeah, and that happens. Especially, it's more acceptable today to violently disagree with people
Oh my gosh.
in an ugly and negative way than it's ever been.
And we've had great role models for that all across the television stations and the internet.
Yeah. So, do you have any place in your life today where you feel stable?
Yeah, several.
Where?
Here inside of my home.
Okay. Because inside your home, you can lock yourself out from the outside.
Yep.
Is that always healthy?
Yes. Okay, I said that in a deflective way. No, it's not, as a matter of fact. And I have to remind myself, unlock the door and go outside, be amongst others. So,
Well, can something like this, the conversations we have like this,
yeah,
can this let you feel like, because if I put myself in my house here and don't go out, I'm hiding.
yeah,
But all of us need points of where we can express.
right. That's right.
And if we didn't have this, the Zoom or the internet,
Yeah,
uh, I think the level of insanity and nervous breakdowns would be over the top.
I do too.
Yeah. So you feel stable in your home. Where else do you feel stable?
In my car. I
Mm.
love my car. I love my car because I'm the driver. I'm in control. It's very reliable. It's a relatively new car, and I can take myself where I want to go. And I'm a good driver. I can pivot in a second if I see anything that I'm, wanting to avoid. Um, and the third place is
Hang on a second. Hang on a second.
okay.
So, are you a personality then that to feel stable, you need to be in control?
Or that used to be an absolute yes. And it was very uncomfortable to be in that mindset and have that be part of my personality. Um, my I am very comfortable uh, being my influence, but what I really enjoy more is being in the presence of people who I know I can really trust. And so I don't need to be in control, and I don't want actually to be in control. I would either like to share the control and just have maybe some influence, or I just don't even need to worry about it. And those circumstances I just cherish.
Hmm. What's your third place of stability?
Nature.
Like
Being,
taking your walks out by the beach,
Mhm.
by the lake?
Yep, being out on the waterfront, taking a walk through the park, taking a walk out on the beach. Um, I love taking walks in the woods, but in order to do that right now, given how crazy the world is, I don't know that I want to go to the woods. I want to see the landscape. I want to see who's out there. And as a matter of fact, I had somebody ask me, a gentleman that I met wanted to get together, and he said, "Let's take a walk." And I said, "Great, come to the beach." And he said, "No, I got this park I'd like to go to. Meet me at this park." I started laughing. I said, "It's really remote. I mean, it's like really remote out there." He goes, "Yeah, no, it'd be really nice. There's nobody around." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know you. I'm not going there because I'm starting to think. First of all, you know, I don't want to have to fend you off. But what if there's, what if there's people out there and I'm gonna, you know, meet with some icky plan?" It made me feel very uncomfortable.
Do you think then, from what I hear you saying, do you think then that environment is a big part of stability?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely, it is.
and when your environment is shaken, when the earthquake happens to your environment, I remember one time I was in an earthquake in Bozeman, Montana,
Ah,
and in the middle of the night, all of a sudden the bed in the room started jumping all over the room. And I was pinned to the bed. I couldn't get out, but I was afraid to even try to get out because I didn't know what was going on.
yeah, right.
And,
That's horrifying.
all of a sudden I was fearful because the environment was controlling me rather than me being able to have a say in the environment.
Very good point. Exquisite, actually.
And I think that's a lot of what's happening today in people. The environment is controlling them and taking away their freedom to be who they want to be, because an environment that you can't control, or an environment where you feel is taking away your right, is an environment that not only increases your fear, but it also builds within you the uncertainty of what to do. And I'm always amazed, Deb, how uncertainty and fear, when they join forces, they paralyze the human psyche.
Yeah, they
And
really
as
do.
confident as I may be in myself, put me in a space where the environment, the uncertainty it's creating, and the fear that goes with it creates in me that feeling of being unstable, but yet I don't know where to go to find the stability.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the things that's really, really been poignant for me this year is being single and not in a marriage at this point in my life, not having a significant other partner, and really cultivating all of my friendships so that And, in ours is another example, cultivating my relationships so that there's stability in the relationship, and there's a safety in that. Like, I know that I can come to you, and I believe that you know that you can come to me if there's a doubt or a question, or it doesn't matter what it's about. It's a news item or an editorial or a project that we're working on, whatever it is. And there have been times this year when I thought to myself, I am so glad that I don't have a mate next to me to go, what the heck is the matter with you? Like, get it together. And then I thought to myself, well, it would be wonderful. There's something sacred. There's not something, there's everything sacred about having the significant other who is your life mate, your soulmate, your love mate. And in that marriage of the two of you, that at your moment of panic, you can look into one another's eyes. Like the plane that you're flying in is zooming down to the ground, and you don't shaking, and you don't know if you're going to survive or not. And you look at each other, and there's strength and stability just looking into one another's eyes and holding on to one another physically.
Okay,
That
hang on. Now,
is
hang on with
amazing.
that. Hang on with that, because
Yeah.
that's interesting what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because do you think that for a lot of people, that being alone creates a sense of uncertainty and instability?
I think it does. I think that it's really sad because those people don't know that they can really count on themselves. I do know that I can.
Does that increase the value and the need for friendship?
You mean the people who feel afraid of being alone?
Hmm.
You know what's sad about that? In a genuine way, no. In a superficial way, yes. Because if you can't know thy own self and know that your internal strength is really there and it's really dependable, and your spiritual being and your intuition and your mind and your heart will always take you to a healthy place if you'll allow it, if you'll do the work and you'll learn it and allow it. And then you can go deep to deep with another. But if what you do is you're always running away from yourself, you won't have a deep to deep that gives you genuine friendship. And that's one of the things that I've really let go of over this last year. If one of my favorite authors is Parker Palmer, who wrote The Courage to Teach,
Hmm.
along with a whole host of other books. And I know we both know him. I befriended him because I was so impressed with his work. And what he said is, when we meet another, we really want to go deep to deep. Hi, how are you? I really want to know. I want to look in your eyes and have you look into mine and know that we can have that exchange. But there's so many people who deflect. Like, I'm not going there. Don't be looking too close, because they're terrified when they get up in the morning and they go to brush their teeth. They never look in the eyes of the mirror. There's, get your teeth done, fix your hair, get on your merry way. So the superficial nature in our culture, in our world, is very disturbing to me.
Do you think that, let me see how I'm going to say this so it comes out right. Do you think that what some people see as stability is actually instability that they have avoided? Can I take something that is draining my life and create a point of being comfortable in it, that I accept it?
Absolutely. It's called bad marriages, bad relationships, bad families that just are, sickening but sticky. Well, I know I can count on them. They're sticky. Can't get away, can't get away, can't get unglued from it. You know, that's not healthy. It's a constant, but it's not stabilizing. It's destabilizing, but you're accustomed to it. And so, how many people, Richard, have you and I encountered over the course of our careers who you look at their circumstance and they love to bond on the drama?
Well, when people come together because of drama, then what they create is the illusion of a healthy relationship. Oh, we have a great relationship, and then as you counsel with them or you get to know them, you can understand that what they've done is they've accepted the uncertainty, the pain, the lack of happiness, the lack of joy as to what life is really about.
100%.
And, it's challenging because those people know it, but they can't admit it. And when you try to have a discussion with them about, are you a hostage or a pioneer? Are you a hostage or are you free to be yourself? And it's amazing how many people who are a hostage, because they've accepted this as the way life is meant to be, or this is what my life was meant to be, that they exist.
Well, think about it this way. So when I first heard the term makeup sex, I was like, makeup sex? What do you mean makeup sex? Well,
Well, you stop and you put makeup on each other and you put lipstick on.
When in social psychology, when we're studying the impact that we have on the environment has on us, we have on one another. If you want to have a really great first date, go to a roller, like a roller coaster, or do something exciting, and you get the adrenaline going and you're all revved up. And what happens is, I'm simplifying it. You think it's because of the person that you're with as opposed to the experience that you're having. And so you mistake that for the zest of love, and it's exciting with this person. Well, the interesting thing is that people who are in these, hostile relationships, we're fighting all the time, and I could just kill this person, and it's so aggravating. And then you get all revved up and you look at each other and you're all revved up, and then boom, you have this intimate physical encounter and you think, yeah, that, oh, it's so passionate. No, it's not healthy passionate, it's angry passionate. You didn't want to hit one another, okay, thank goodness for that, but it's a mistaken attribution to a situation as, yeah, we're really close, yeah, we love each other like crazy. You do? Because it kind of seems like you may hate each other, and you're revving it up and you're mislabeling the physiological responses.
I think sometimes what you're talking about is also can be classified as revenge sex.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I am upset with you, and sometimes when you reach that pitch,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're no longer a human; you turn into an animal.
There you go. That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the trouble that ensues for people when they engage in those behaviors is enormous, particularly if they procreate in that relationship.
Well, the other thing I used to find in the counseling room with couples is the number of couples that had a damaged relationship or a relationship that was, volatile in its own way. And there's a lot of different volatilism in a relationship, but their answer is have a baby.
Oh my goodness, 100%. And the pressure on that fetus, the pressure on that infant, and the pressure on that person, it just absolutely, it actually infuriates me.
I had this one couple that was their solution. Let's have a baby. So they had triplets. And I told them, see, God's punishing you.
That's that, that's enormous. That's really enormous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never, I've never appreciated stability and integrity in my own self provision the way that I do since this whole last year. There is um, a warmth inside of me. When I pray, I'm praying for our Creator, who I refer to as God, and our Lord, our Father. I pray for, in divine time, for my assignment to be clear, for benefit to all and harm to none, with the work I do as a human being, personally and professionally, and to receive illumination about direction and rightness, so that I can be productive and on purpose, on assignment in this life. And it's in some ways um, more isolating, and in other ways it's really invitational. It's just that it's only invitational to others who share that value. And perhaps when you get into this phase of your life, maybe when you hit your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, you see so clearly what your comfort is and what your discomfort is, and you realize, I think I've been uncomfortable enough days in my life. I don't think I need to do it again.
Yeah. Deb, what do you think is the connection between stability and trust? Is there a connection?
Absolutely.
What do you think the connection is?
When you know that you can count on something, it is stable, you are then in a position of trust. I trust that the ground underneath me is not going to be moving. I trust I'm not living in an earthquake zone. I trust that I can walk outside my door and I can take a walk and be safe. That stability allows me to develop trust, because trust comes from a series of experiences that solidify that it'll be that way again, and it'll be that way again. And when we have trust, it's like Stephen Covey's formula for trust. When trust is high, things can happen very quickly because we're not questioning and pulling it apart. We just go with it. And when things can move quickly, it means it's less expensive. We don't have to have an expense of either financials or emotional energy. When we are in a position of high trust, things flow. And when we're in a position of distrust, there's nothing we can count on. We don't believe. It's very destabilizing. How's that for an answer? What do you think of that?
I think you're right on. And when I think of stability and trust, I think of calmness.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, yes.
When I think of instability and lack of trust, I think of conflict.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
And is it possible that one of the things that we've got to address in this country and address in our world is the instability that's been created by not being able to trust people? My friend John Tennant, who lives in Winnipeg, Canada, asked me a question the other day, because we were talking about what's happening in our country. And he said, Do you think anybody in your country trusts anybody else? And I thought for a moment and I said, I think there's very few that trust, because I think conflict that's not approached with the design of resolution creates a breaking of trust. And I think what we're seeing today is those that we have and are looking to for guidance have broken the trust of people, because it's more like they've become self-serving than an attitude of servitude toward the people that they represent.
Uh-huh.
And I think one of the healing factors that we've got to have in this country, and you know, I'm not sure right now how we get back to it, but if we're to create stability as a nation, we've got to learn how to trust again. And when I look to the horizon right now, I don't see anything that tells me I can trust. Because to me, one of the greatest erosions to trust is doubt.
Oh, you're 100% on that one. Yes, I agree 100%. It's doubt. As soon as we have doubt, everything in our mind, the way that the human mind works. When we ask a question of the mind, the conscious mind goes into the recesses of the mind, the subconscious and the unconscious, because the mind is explorative, right? And so you ask the mind a question and the mind goes, I know, here, let's go over in this cavern. So doubt is a questioning. And once you start questioning, you start walking down that path. You go from one chamber into the next, into the next, into the next. If you have a business partner who's cheating in the business, you start thinking, now I wonder where that money went to, and I wonder where that asset went to, and I wonder what happened with this deal. And then you just go down into a deep well of doubt. And even if the person has been innocent in places, those questions cause you to look with a different pair of lenses. I'm now looking at you with X-ray vision because I don't believe anything you tell me.
Well, what I see from working with human behavior is that when doubt interrupts trust, it creates perceptions.
Yes, that's right. Very well put.
And those perceptions, then I can make reality without having facts. So when that happens, it takes us back to our word we started with. And that's then I begin to feel uncertain about anything you say or anything you promise. Or I begin to look through the eyes of doubt. And it's amazing the questions that the eyes of doubt can create.
Indeed. So let me ask you a question.
No. Okay.
Have you heard, do you remember when we were in college and in graduate school studying psychology and social psychology, the one most undesirable trait in another is none other than volatility. Because when somebody's volatile, we cannot trust. We don't know what we're walking into. You were so calm the other day. Now you're violent. You were so happy. Now you're so sullen. You were so easy to get along with. Now you're so difficult. You broke trust because every time I walk in here, it's a different reality. And my perception is, I don't know what perception to lead with.
Well, it comes back to, and how many times have you heard this? I don't know what to expect.
There you go. That's right. We don't like that. We don't.
So if I walk into that environment not knowing what to expect, then I'm not walking in as a stable person. I'm walking as a person filled with uncertainty.
Yeah, destabilized.
Yeah. So in reality, I'm not being guided by clarity. I'm actually being guided by fear.
Right. Yeah,
But if I trust you, then I walk in with a clear, calm spirit. If I don't trust you, then I walk in filled with that uncertainty that makes me doubt. And it's interesting because do you think doubt affects listening?
I'm laughing because yes. It certainly does.
Like the teacher asking the little student a nonsense question that they know the answer to.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh. I was always the kid in school who was saying, I know, I know. Okay, can somebody answer the question? Does anybody know? I know, I know. I'd be raising my hand like a little maniac. And after a while, the teacher doesn't want to call on you all the time. I can remember being really dramatic, sitting at my desk, raising my hand, sort of like I'm depressed now, hanging it up over my head. I remember slouching over the desk, holding my arm up. I always want to answer.
Well, if I don't trust myself, I raise my hand like this.
Right next to your shoulder. I think, or if you really don't want, if you don't want to get called on in class, just don't look at the teacher who's asking the question. I used to
Yeah,
always
I go.
Mr. Flint, do you think that paper in front of your face is going to prevent me from calling on you? How about if you take the floor and answer the question?
But if I believe in myself, I'm ready to answer the question.
Yeah. You know what, Richard? This raises a thought in my mind and in my heart simultaneously. When you've heard me mention the book so many times. That started out as a poem by Dorothy Law Nolte. Children learn what they live. You know, when children grow up in uncertainty, they learn to be fearful.
There's a book out there that's a lot like what you're talking about. It's entitled The Hurried Child.
Yes, I love that book too. I love that book.
And so much in that book is about what happens to me when parents don't understand the importance of childhood.
Yep.
A gentleman named Charlie Shepard wrote a book entitled Promises to Peter. And it was a book one day that his idea came from his son was like 3 or 4 years old, and they were having breakfast, and he was in a high chair. They were having oatmeal, and the little kid named Peter, he took his oatmeal and just dumped it in the floor. And Charlie was down cleaning up the oatmeal, and he looked up at him, and his thought was, I need to be able to see the world from down here as he sees it.
Oh my. Oh my. Wow.
And I think sometimes when we live with uncertainty or we live with instability
Mm-hmm.
or we live with the lack of trust, I think it creates some very unhealthy perceptions. And this is why I asked you the questions when we started. Where do you go for stability? And for me, my point of stability always goes back to my theological training.
You know what? As soon as you started talking, I thought, wait, I want to change something.
Oh, but you were right, because everything you were saying just led back to that.
Yeah.
But I believe in the fact that, God will never give us more than we can handle.
Well,
And
this is embarrassing, because how dare I not include that in my answer? Because the only reason that my home, my car, and my walks by myself are at all of benefit is because I'm not there alone. I am with God. And I'm in prayer.
and people look at me funny, Deb, when I say this, but I don't go to church to worship God. I worship God in private. I go to church to celebrate the greatness he brings to my life.
Ever since you told that to me, I've realized that I do the same thing. because I am with God and God is with me all the time. And it is very private. I love being in a congregation. I love the sacraments and the ceremony and the prayers and the singing. I love the sign of peace. I love that union with all of our brethren. I love that. And oh my gosh, do I miss that? I mean, it has brought me to tears.
I had this couple that I was trying to work with. I was there seeking to be able to help them. And he wouldn't hear anything I said because I wouldn't sit there with a Bible in my hand, and only thing I would do would be quote scripture to him.
Oh boy.
And he told me, he said, you're not a believer. You don't really believe in God, or you would have this Bible and everything you say to us would be scripture. And I looked at him, I said, do you believe that the Bible is a living Bible? He said, yeah. I said, do you believe that the Bible in its own way is a history book from a culture that was different from our culture? Well, yeah. Then do you believe that the message of the Bible can be demonstrated through the life of somebody? And I said, everything I do is biblically based. And I don't have to quote scripture to you in order to know that what I'm saying to you is a message uh, that God has shared with me to share with you.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want to talk to me after that.
Isn't that sad? People can use something that's really good as a crutch, as a tool to not have to cooperate sometimes. And I've had that experience too. It's unfortunate.
Well, the Bible to me is something to live by.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible to me is a set of principles.
Mm-hmm.
And those principles are what I build my foundation on. And the stronger those principles are within me, the stronger my belief, my trust, and my faith. And the stronger my belief, my trust, and my faith, the less uncertainty can push its way into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's back to this. I think again, one of the great damaging things about our country today is how we and a certain group have are slowly trying to push God out.
Boy, that is so true. That is
And
so
the
true.
and this is one of my concerns about the future, is that we're going to replace the word of God with the laws of man. And
That can't be
when
the
that happens, then we lose consciousness. Uh, we we live and gain more uncertainty because you have to have some point in your life where there's stability. And my stability is in my belief, my faith, and my trust that that God is in control.
So here's a number of things that, whenever we start our shows, we want to thread through our tactics and our strategies, but I think especially right now, it is the most kind and loving thing to do, to not just have our audience hearing and thinking about the things that we're saying, but feeling a sense of calm, because you and I both do have a sense of calm in the middle of a lot of chaos. So strategically for me, it is my all the little habits and all the nuances of what I do every day. I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes, I look out my windows, and I say, well, the world is still out there. And so I thank you, God. We're still in existence. And I can see, and I have all my senses, and I can move, and I can stretch, and I can give myself a hug, and I can get up, and I can begin my routine. And so I start out in gratitude, absolutely every day. And as I go through my day, there's jewelry that I wear that is got religious symbolism attached to it that just reminds me. It's like when I put my hand over my heart. and I say different prayers throughout the day, even if some of them are formal and some of them are just my turning to our Creator saying, dear Lord, help me understand, or dear Lord, help me not get agitated in this moment, or guide me as I'm trying to make this decision. And then it is also, if you don't believe in a God and you believe in spirituality, and I used to really think spiritual had a lot of value, and it does, but a priest very wisely said to me, his objection to spirituality was it was a God without a face. And I kind of like that. But if you use spirit, or you use nature or the universe, at least you're using something, and put your faith there, put your trust there, and let it be stabilizing for you. So while it's not for you and me, if other people are on that path, it's better than them carrying the whole weight of the world on their own shoulders. It's off-putting to Buddha or universe or whatever, right?
Well, and I have had lots and lots of times where people have come to me and, they'll tell me your faith is ridiculous. How can you believe in a God? And Josh McDowell one time wrote a book entitled Evidence in Search of a Verdict. And it's all about that, belief, trust, and faith are personal.
Mm-hmm.
And, my beliefs may not be your beliefs, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I don't judge you or criticize you because of them. I just want to know more about why you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes people collide because they don't listen, they interject.
Right.
And again, what happens when that comes? We come back to our word. I feel uncertain about you.
Mm-hmm.
If you really believe that, then why can't we talk about it?
Right.
And
Right.
anything called a belief that you can't talk about is an opinion.
Yeah, I like it. When you first mentioned that to me, I thought about that, and I had to really ponder that. But I think that that's really spot on.
Yeah. Well, I think the word uncertainty is a big, big word in our world today. And I think until we find stability, uncertainty will become a bigger part of life.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Everybody needs to, anyone who's listening to this, you need to find that one place in your life where you feel stable right now.
Mm-hmm.
And stand there. Stand there.
Yeah.
And use that point of stability to keep
90 seconds.
inwardly calm.
Yeah.
And with a sense of clarity that there is a purpose for my life.
Excellent. Friends, we wish for you everything peaceful and centered and calm and faith-filled, and find it and remain there. And we will be back again next Tuesday. Dr. Deb Carlin and Richard Flint here on No Apologies. And
60 seconds.
bless you for being with us today. So that's a peace out.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.
Oh,
Goodbye.
cheerio.